What's happening? MC Marcus Chapman here, ready to break down show number 4 in the MC 25. The show was called Marcus in the Morning / Teen Mom Abortion. This was done on January 20th, 2007, actually 8 days before the show at number 5. Should cell phones be banned from schools? So this show was done on a Saturday morning from 7 to 10. So let me give you the back story on it. When I got back to GCI the third and last time that I worked there, that started on August the 5th of 2006. It was a Saturday night 6 to 10 show. The following week, August the 12th, was the date of the Bud Billiken Parade. So that particular Saturday, I guest starred for Chris Michaels on something called The Legal Show. It was a show with attorney Warren Ballentine. Him and Chris Michaels did together. It was mainly for Warren Ballentine to give out legal advice. And Chris Michaels, was in there with him because he was an actual personality. So I guest starred for Chris on that particular show. And that was the first time that I worked that Saturday morning shift as an on-air talent. And at a certain point in early 2007, I found out that they were not going to have the legal show on GCI anymore. They ended up moving it to V103. And then eventually they didn't do it at all. So when I heard that they were not going to have the legal show, I jumped at the opportunity to try to host the Saturday mornings because I had already started hosting the Sunday afternoon, which we heard at show number 5 and show number 12. And I had the 3 o'clock thought where I was able to, get into some more news type topics, more mature topics, as opposed to just, getting the party going, creating a party energy on a Saturday night. I didn't really want to do that anymore. So the Sunday afternoon was the first chance to do that. So the Saturday morning provided another opportunity for me to get more into topical type radio, news type stuff that would mean more to people, have more of an impact. And unlike the Sunday show, though, the Sunday show, I pretty much just let it be known I wanted to do it, and I got moved into that spot. The Saturday morning was a little bit more difficult. I actually had to submit a proposal twice before I got the green light to host the show, because even though it wasn't during the week, it was still a morning show. And Elroy Smith was still the program director at that time, and the station, what we call the positioning statement was WGCI was number 1 for hip hop and R&B. Even though that was the case, he didn't want it to be a hip hop oriented morning show on Saturday. I remember him specifically telling me to think outside of that. He wanted it to still be a little bit more adult oriented as opposed to being hip hop. So once I made that adjustment and I, made my proposal as to what I wanted to do, the big centerpiece of the show was going to be the 8 o'clock opinion poll. So the 8 o'clock opinion poll served the same purpose as the 3 o'clock thought on Sunday, but it was for Saturday morning, where I would go through the paper, pick out, a topic that I felt would be interesting to the audience, put it out there and let people call and give their opinions. Okay, so this particular one was probably the one that got the most response. I knew it was going to be a hot topic soon as I picked it out. It was front page on the paper that day about teenage girls under the age of 18 who were pregnant, who, should they had to get parental consent before they had an abortion. And abortion is a hot topic anyway. You get some people on the side of, it's the woman's body, it's her right, you can't make her do this regardless of what age she is. And then you have other people who were more like, hey, these are teenage girls. They should not have all this stuff done without the parents knowing, at least. And so it created a great piece of dialogue that I'm really proud of because it was meaningful. There were a lot of calls about it, even before I even got to the subject. When you listen to the clip, in the very beginning, when I say what the 8 o'clock opinion poll is in the intro, which I did on purpose because I wanted people to know that it was going to be a hot topic coming up. Right away, people were calling trying to say what they felt it should be. They wanted to discuss it. And I had to tell them, no, just hang on. We ain't got to that part of the show. But you actually hear some people saying, this is a very important topic. They knew it, and I knew it as well. Now, the process of even getting the topic was from the Sun-Times. A lot of times in that era, I had a subscription to the physical paper because the paper was still physical at that time. But they also had their website. So sometimes I wouldn't get my paper delivered to where I lived before I had to leave to go do the show. So what I would do is I would get up in the morning, I would go online, I go to the Sun-Times website, and I would go through and see what stories, would work. And so this one was front page. So it was the first thing I saw. So right away I knew that was going to be a good one. Sometimes when I had to pick them, it wasn't that easy. I might have to go through and search or even go to some other websites. But normally it came from the Chicago Sun-Times. And this one was front page with Lisa Madigan, the attorney or whatever her position is for the state of Illinois. And, people just started calling right away. And one of the more interesting calls that ends up in the show is there was a doctor who called who, because everybody was talking about abortion being a surgery and, you can't have these young girls having surgery and their parents don't know. One doctor called who dealt with teens specifically, and she let it be known that an abortion doesn't have to be a surgery if the mother is less than like 8 weeks pregnant, I believe she said. And I didn't know that. I was pretty sure the majority of the listeners didn't know that. So I felt like that was some information that got out there that was valuable, and that was one of the main calls in the show. And you hear different people calling in to give their opinions. It was a really hot topic. You had men calling in, you had women who had gotten pregnant very early on in life. I remember one lady said she had been a mother since she was 14. You had a girl who said she was 20. She had an abortion like earlier in, a couple of years before, something like that. So it was a really hot topic. And I really felt like it was something where I was contributing to the community. That was real important for me at that time because I wanted people to know that I cared, that I gave a damn. I wasn't just some dude on the radio just, talking about parties and, checking in from this part of town or this block or whatever. I actually, was a person with a strong sense of intelligence. Okay. Some people say radio has been dumbed down. Even back then they were saying it. Well, I am far from being dumb. Okay. I have a degree in communications, a minor in black studies, and a big chunk of my school career, I had really good grades. Matter of fact, I was the top person in class, like 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. I skipped a grade, so I've always been intelligent, not just in terms of the school, but in terms of being social as well. You say book smarts and you got the street smarts. Well, I always had both. So I knew that I could have a good impact on the air if I was doing these type of topics. So that was really important for me. Now, aside from the 8 o'clock opinion poll and the old teen mom abortion thing, the other thing you hear in this show is the entertainment news report that I did. And for those, I would normally go to either sohh.com or allhiphop.com, and I get, entertainment info. The only thing that I would change on this particular show was that I think I had too many stories. I would have probably cut one or two of them out because you didn't hear the music that I was talking over ends up running out before I'm finished. It didn't take me too long to finish after that, but I could have, gotten rid of one story or two, but other than that, it was good. And the thing is, most people tend to think that radio folks have a whole lot of people in the studio helping them out. Normally with a morning show during the week, that is the case. You usually have a host, but then you also have a co-host, a producer, you might have a news person, a sports person. You may have 5, 6, 7 different people working on a morning show. In this particular case, this Saturday morning show that I was doing, none of that was the case. I did everything. Okay, I picked out the stories like a producer would do. I would I had to print the stuff out, and the printer was like down the hall, so I'd have to, print it in the studio, but then I had to run down the hall, get the copies, and then I would have to highlight the stuff that I was going to mention for the 8 o'clock opinion poll or the entertainment news report. Same thing. Sometimes with the entertainment report, I didn't even have time to highlight everything, so my experience as a broadcaster, as an on-air personality, would kick in because I had spent years earlier learning how to go through the newspaper and pick out stories. That's something that I learned when I worked with Irene Mojica back in 1997. I hated it at the time, but I learned how to go through the paper and pick out stories and highlight the important points and all that. So I would do that. And if I didn't have time to highlight, I was able to freestyle while I was live on the air and figure out what I needed to say and be able to deliver it without even messing up. So I had to do that sometime, but I would have cut, one or two stories out of the entertainment news report. And like I said, I did everything. And matter of fact, I remember at somewhere around that time, somebody who I knew, who I met back in 1999, made a comment about, I know you got all them producers in there doing all the work for you while you just on there talking. I'm like, no. Maybe that's the case for some of these comedians you hear on the radio, maybe it's for some other folks, but I'm in there doing everything by my damn self. And in most cases in radio, the person who's on the air is the person doing everything in most cases. Now, obviously, with a lot of morning shows, that's not the case. But yeah, I didn't have no interns and all that kind of stuff. But I had done all of those things beforehand myself years earlier. I had been the intern, I had been the studio assistant, I had been the producer. So I knew how to handle all those jobs, and I did them all, including being an on-air host. When I did this Saturday morning show that I did, starting in 2007. The other thing that's worth note for this show, and it also applies for show number 5 and show number 12, and one more that's coming up. When I did Sunday afternoons and when I did Saturday mornings, I started using a different technique for my on-air delivery. I didn't want to just be on there. Normally, I would just be giving out the energy, just coming with it, boom, boom, boom. But for those particular features, particularly the 8 o'clock opinion poll and the 3 o'clock thought on Sundays, it required me to slow down my delivery a little bit. And I kind of took some techniques from a guy named Bob Stroud, who has been a long time midday host in Chicago on WDRV 97.1 FM The Drive. I first heard him back in 1998 on a station called CD 94.7, which was a classic rock station. Probably it was the main classic rock station that got me into classic rock. And I would notice that Bob Stroud, when he would talk, he would use little pregnant pauses, as we call them, when he was giving his delivery. So he might say something like 97.1 FM The Drive with Steely Dan, Asia. Before that, we heard The Doors with Light My Fire. He would take his time instead of rushing through it, and he would pause at certain points to emphasize different things, and I started using that myself when I did like the 8 o'clock opinion poll. If you listen, you don't hear me going through stuff too fast. I go at a certain pace, I slow down, stop for a second, pause, pick back up. So this was an era when I was doing that. And also, you may notice that I'm talking about any music underneath me and playing the calls like that in the sections where it's before we going into commercials, because I always took pride in having the best, what we call music beds, the instrumental tracks that you would talk over. I would have stuff from, Death Row and stuff like that you couldn't actually play on the radio if it was, the original version with the cursing. But, I linked up with Steve Miggity Maestro back in like 96, and we looped some different little small pieces of instrumental from some of those songs, and we turned them into music beds that would last, a minute and a half, 2 minutes or whatever. And but I didn't use any of those when I was doing the 8 o'clock opinion poll or even the 3 o'clock thought, because if you have a more serious subject, it actually works better if you don't have any music underneath you, because the public is focused strictly on what's being said. There are no other audible distractions like music to create a certain mood. So that was another technique that I used when I did the 8 o'clock opinion poll and a lot of the other stuff in this era. So this particular show is at number 4, Marcus in the Morning, Teen Mom Abortion, because for 2 reasons. One, it's a great content show. It really shows the the type of subjects that I was doing at that time that were more meaningful radio, and also it kind of hints at what could have been. I never really wanted to be a morning man. Most people in radio want to do mornings. I never wanted to do mornings. I always wanted to do afternoon because mornings and afternoon is pretty much the same audience. It's just, you catching people coming home from work or school as opposed to going. You don't have as much talk time as you do in the morning, but you also don't have a bunch of people. You know, Mornings typically has a team, and I never really liked that. I like to just be me and the listeners. It's just more effective for me. Some people work better in a team atmosphere. You put them by themselves, and they not really all that. Some people work better just solo as opposed to with a team. But with the Saturday morning, it gave me the chance to do a morning show, but without having all these extra people. So you still kind of hear what could have been had it actually been Marcus in the Morning. Matter of fact, I got passed up for a morning show on a different station in Chicago back in like 2004. And, I never ended up working in the mornings, but so what? There are some people who think you're not a major deal in radio unless you do mornings. Those folks are wrong. But this particular show, Marcus in the Morning, Teen Mom Abortion, gives you an idea of what it might have sounded like if I did a weekday morning show, except there would have been other people involved. And I probably would have had, it would have been not as serious all the time, of course, depending on what was going on in the news. But, it does show you some idea of what could have been. And actually, I got passed up for a morning show in Chicago, and I want to say 2014 that was. I could have been a morning show host here again, but, I got asked if I was interested. I said, yeah. And then I was told I wasn't one of the finalists. I'm like, okay, well, you mentioned it to me. I didn't ask about it. But anyway, so this show here, January 20th, 2007, Saturday morning, 7 to 10, Marcus in the Morning, Teen Mom Abortion. It was one of the hottest topics I ever had on the radio, if not the hottest.